So today I want to go over the Barbarian build I've been using in the Diablo 4 beta. Now I primarily just want to go over the skill tree and then go over the legendaries with their legendary powers that I'm currently using. I don't want to do a big focus on the actual stats and affixes you have because most people aren't going to be min-maxing or trying to get the best stats in the level 25 beta anyway. So I think the skills and the legendary powers are going to be the most important parts of this build for the beta weekends. So first off, we're going to be using Frenzy as our basic skill and Fury Generator, and I think this is probably going to be the best Fury Generator out of all the basic skills. And this is just a basic attack, but hitting an enemy with it increases its attack speed by 20% for 3 seconds, stacking up to 3 times for a total of 60% attack speed increase, which means after those first 3 hits, you're just going to be hitting ridiculously quickly, giving you quite a lot of Fury very quickly as well. Then we're going to be getting Enhanced Frenzy, and while you have that full 60% attack speed buff, you're going to get an additional 2 Fury for every single hit. So now it's 6 per hit. So now you're just generating a lot more Fury. And then we're getting Combat Frenzy. You gain 8% damage reduction for each stack of Frenzy you currently have. So up to 3, 24% damage reduction is pretty massive. And you're going to be weaving Frenzy with our core skill we're going to be using. So you're going to have this up quite a lot. And that brings us to our core and main spammable damaging skill, which is Upheaval. And if you're max level in the beta, put 5 points into this. This is going to be your main damage, and you want it as strong as you can possibly get it. This is a Fury Spender, and it just does a big cone attack in front of you, has a pretty decent range, does really big damage. It is a slow to cast ability, but really high damage, and you're going to want to be using your highest damage weapon you have, so one of your two-handers. And then for upgrades, we're using Enhanced Upheaval. Upheaval has a 20% chance to stun all enemies it damages for 2.5 seconds. Massive can just be an AoE stun if you get the procs. And then Furious Upheaval, and this is going to synergize very well with Frenzy. Dealing direct damage to an enemy with a skill that is not Upheaval causes your next cast of Upheaval to deal 8% increased damage, stacking up to 8 times. So if you have this fully stacked, 80% damage increase on Upheaval. Now the really good thing about Frenzy is that if you're using this with dual wielded weapons, it procs Furious Upheaval 2 times every time you use Frenzy on an enemy, because it's hitting with both your weapons, gives you those 2 stacks. So you only need to hit a target 4 times, then you cast an Upheaval and you have a max damage Upheaval with that 80% damage increase. This is going to do quite a lot of damage, and it puts you in a good rhythm of hitting a few Frenzies, hitting an Upheaval, hitting a few Frenzies, hitting an Upheaval, and it synergizes together very well. And next up we have our defensive skills, starting off with Rallying Cry. This has a base 25-second cooldown, bellow a Rallying Cry, increasing your movement speed by 30% and resource generation by 50%. At a baseline, this lasts for 6 seconds for you and 3 seconds for your allies. Then we're getting Enhanced Rallying Cry, which grants you Unstoppable while it's active. And Unstoppable is actually very strong because if you're already CC'd, you can still use an Unstoppable ability and it removes that CC as well. So if you get stunned, you just pop an Unstoppable skill, it removes that stun and makes you immune to all CC for the rest of the duration. Then we're also using Tactical Rallying Cry. This automatically generates 25 Fury on cast and grants you an additional 50% resource generation. So now when you cast it, 25 Fury and 100% resource generation. So pretty massive. You're going to be getting your Fury very quickly with this. And then our main defensive for actually staying alive is Iron Skin. Has a 14-second cooldown on a baseline. Steal yourself, gaining a barrier that absorbs 50% of your missing life 5 seconds. And then we're also getting Enhanced Iron Skin, so it absorbs 5% more of your maximum life. And then the main thing is Tactical Iron Skin. While Iron Skin is active, heal for 10% of the barrier's original amount as life per second. So now you're healing with this massive barrier on you. And the main way you want to use this is you want to get as low as possible before you actually use this, because it's going to give you a bigger barrier the lower health you are. And that means the bigger the barrier, the more you're actually going to get healed from Tactical Iron Skin. This is an incredibly strong defensive skill, and you'll see in the footage that this is the main way I stay alive. This can heal you quite a lot of your health while giving you a massive barrier if you use it correctly. Then down to our Brawling Skills, we're going to be using Leap. Has around a 17-second cooldown on a baseline, lucky hit chance of 35%, and you just leap in a direction, deal damage if you hit any enemies, and knock back those enemies if you happen to hit them with it. Then we're using Enhanced Leap. If Leap doesn't damage any enemies, its cooldown is reduced by 4 seconds, so now you can use this more as a movement skill outside of combat. And then we're also using Power Leap. If Leap damages damages at least one enemy, you gain 40 fury, which is pretty massive. And this is going to be very strong with one of our legendary powers. Then we also have 1 point into booming voice. Your shout skill durations are increased by 10%. That's to help with rallying cry, make it last on us a bit longer. Then we're going to be putting 3 points into the 3 other passives in the brawling tree. Aggressive resistance, gain 4% damage reduction while berserking. So anytime we're berserking, which is going to be able to be activated off a handful of our skills, we're taking damage reduction. Then when a brawling skill damages at least one enemy, gain berserking for 1 second. So anytime we leap on an enemy, we're going to be berserking. And then prolific fury, while berserking, fury generation is increased by 6%. Now you could remove this fury generation point and put it into battle fervor, which means you'll be berserking for 2 seconds every time you hit something with leap. Then we are skipping everything in weapon mastery and going down to our ultimate. Now we are using Wrath of the Berserker for the ultimate. 60-second base cooldown, gain berserking and unstoppable for 5 seconds. And for the next 10 seconds, dealing direct damage with basic skills grants berserking for an additional 5 seconds. So you're going to be able to get berserking up for quite a long time with Wrath of the Berserker. And then we're getting the upgrade while Wrath of the Berserker is active, gain 20% increased movement speed and 30% increased fury generation. So this is just going to be a massive buff to your character. Anytime you use this ultimate, you're going to be moving around crazy quickly, doing more damage. You're going to be unstoppable. You're going to constantly be gaining berserker, which also gives us increased fury generation. You're basically buffing everything with this one ultimate. So that's all for a skill tree and skill points, but now I want to mainly go over my legendary powers from my legendary gear pieces. Like I mentioned, this is 2 3-day beta weekends. I don't think a lot of people are going to be trying to min-max their stats and get the best stats roll they can possibly get, so I mainly just want to go over the legendary powers. So first off, on our chest armor, we have Iron Skin grants unstoppable and 14% damage reduction. So now when Iron Skin is active, we're also unstoppable. And with this, I think half our entire kit gives unstoppable, so it's pretty ridiculous, and just a percentage damage reduction is going to be absolutely massive. And then next up we have our legs. While you have a barrier active, there's a 20% chance to ignore incoming direct damage from distant enemies, and distant enemies are basically just enemies at a range. I'm not sure exactly the range, but it seems to be basically any enemy that's not in melee range. And if you'll recall, our Iron Skin is a barrier on a moderate cooldown, so now anytime we have our barrier up, we also have a decent chance for range enemies to just not deal any damage to us, which is pretty massive and makes Iron Skin much stronger, because also while Iron Skin is active is when that heal from our upgrades is going to continue to apply. So keeping our barrier from Iron Skin up as much as possible is going to be very good for keeping the heal going. And then on our boots, we have a lucky hit. The damaging an enemy with a core skill has a 40% chance to extend the duration of berserking by 1 second, and you double this if it's a critical strike. Now this isn't going to proc a ton of the time just because of us having much lower stats being lower level, but this would be very good with this build anytime it procs, because we can proc our berserking with our ultimates or leaping on enemies. Then we could use our main damaging ability Upheaval, which is a core skill, and potentially extend the duration of berserking. Then on one of our weapons, we have after generating 100 fury, your next core skill creates a dust devil that deals damage to enemies behind the target. So after you generate 100 fury, it's going to show you a buff, and once we use our next Upheaval, it also creates this little tornado that shoots forward and does some damage to enemies, just some additional damage. And you'll be proccing this quite a bit because we do generate a lot of fury. Then on our necklace, damaging an elite grants you a barrier absorbing up to 400 damage for 10 seconds. This effect can only happen once every 45 seconds. Now this is really strong just because elites are obviously the stronger enemies, and getting a big barrier when starting an elite fight is going to be very helpful, but also, as we just went over, we're also going to have a 20% chance to ignore all range damage with barrier active, and this is another barrier. So this is just going to synergize with our other legendary pretty well for a lot of survivability. Then, this is probably one of our most important legendary powers, reduces the cooldown of a leap by 3 seconds per enemy hit up to 9 seconds. So leap for me has a 16.66 second cooldown right now. So if I hit 3 enemies, it more than halves the cooldown. And leap actually does decent damage. It generates us a lot of fury, and it also berserks us. So this is going to be very strong. You leap into a group of enemies, then you can leap pretty shortly after that. So very strong legendary with this build. So that's pretty much all I want to go over for this Barbarian build for the Diablo 4 beta weekends. Very strong build. You're actually able to survive a lot, and I know Barbarian Barbarian seems to very much be the weakest class out of the three in this first beta weekend, but with this build, you're actually able to do everything much more easily. You're able to survive a lot, which has definitely still been an issue for Barbarians, and you're able to set up these very big upheavals with the 80% damage increase that you proc all the time. You're going to be berserking a lot. Anytime you pop your ultimate, you're just going to be generating fury, getting massive damage increases the whole time. So it's actually a pretty strong build. But that's all I want to go over. So subscribe if you want to see more Diablo 4 or other videos. Leave a like if you liked the video. Leave a comment down below what you guys think about this Barbarian build, and thanks for watching.
I'm low on fury. I must wait. Not ready yet. I don't have enough fury.